going on, everyone? Welcome into Big Time Football Talk. So I want to get into a topic that I really get heated about, to be honest. In that regard is expanding the college football playoff. And like I've said, I think I've talked a little bit about this before on this channel. One thing I really the reason I really learned to fall in love with college football was how great of a value there is in the regular season. The regular season is like no other regular season in college football. Every game is so important, and it's really the reason why I watch college football so closely growing up compared to any other sport. Because in baseball, you got 160 some games, and basketball, you got a ton of games, especially the NBA. I mean, the NBA goes till in a normal year, June, July, and like even this year with COVID, it goes even further. But anyways, point being is like back, I remember 2010. Everyone was locked in on the number one team because there was 3 straight weeks. Oklahoma was one of them where the number one team went down, and it was just like, this is crazy because if you're the number one team, you just got to keep winning. And you saw in 2007 that a 2-loss LSU team in the national title, and you saw everyone kept losing that year. You saw just how important the regular season was because you lose 1 or 2 games, likely in the BCS era, you were done for sure. And with one loss, it was kind of, it was iffy if you're going to get in, but the regular season just so very important. And that's what I just love because every week it's like, you got to win this game for your home team or for the team you root for. Every game is just so crucial, and one loss and you're just, and if it's an early loss, you might have been okay. But if it's a late loss, it's like, man, that's just tough because you'll likely move back in the rankings, and it's hard to build your way back up unless you had like a strong strength of schedule or you got hot and you passed whatever their test was, the computer test in the BCS era. But yeah, expanding it to 8 would just be, the regular season would just keep getting devalued. And it's happening right now. And, Kirk Herbstreit's comments, not his comments about Michigan, that was Michigan, Ohio State, that was another comments. But his other comments he made were very interesting because he was talking about the Iowa Hawkeyes, about how they started 0-2 and have now won 4 straight and are playing good football. But he's like, no one talks about them and some of these other teams because it's all about the college football playoff. And I think to myself that, these analysts created this. Like, this is, you got to stop and think. All these analysts, I've heard guys say it, and I know Stephen A. Smith has said it on ESPN, whatever, I'm not a big fan of a lot of the ESPN guys, but there's a lot of ESPN analysts arguing for 8 teams. Like, I'm not making this stuff up. This is legitimate. And I know there's a lot of fans out there that argue for 8 too. Rich Eisen went on there, and it's like, dude, you guys are creating this. No one wants to watch Iowa now because they eliminated themselves from the playoffs almost essentially with the 1 loss, and the 2 loss. It's just like, that's it. You guys created that. Like, that is the reality you guys want to create. You guys want to expand even more, or that's what 4 teams has done a little bit. And I'm for 4 teams, even though I didn't, I didn't mind the BCS. I was for 4 teams because a lot of years you saw 06 Michigan had a case with 1 loss. In 2010, Stanford had a case with 1 loss to make the national championship, and then USC in 08 with that great defense. I was okay with 4, but yeah, that's even this 4 now is devalued the regular season. That's an example there Herbstreit used with Iowa, why no one pays attention to Iowa because they're essentially out of it. And I know my dad and I have talked that the playoff has done so much for recruiting. Like, look at Ohio State, Clemson, Alabama, teams that have frequently visited the playoff. Their recruiting has just been taken up to a whole nother level now, honestly. Like, it's just insane. It's insane, honestly, when you look at it. But that type of exposure, obviously the playoff is not as big as the Super Bowl, and will never likely be that because there's no event like the Super Bowl. But, every recruit on New Year's Day, New Year's Eve, whenever it's been, somewhere around New Year's when it's been, that every recruit in the nation is watching those games. And, Clemson, not as much, but especially in recent years, has built up a proud tradition. Alabama's a proud tradition. Ohio State's a proud traditional school. And now those kids are even like more invested in wanting to go there, even if you have to compete for a job. Because it's like, look at, man, you're playing on national TV New Year's Eve, New Year's Day, and the recognition you'll get as far as, NFL. If you look at the NFL, look at who, this draft especially has so many talented players. But look at who gets the favorite for higher draft position. It's usually the schools, Oklahoma, Ohio States, the Clemsons, the Bamas. Those players are usually, when in doubt, it's goes to the guy that, plays at the bigger school. Like, for example, the wide receiver position was so hard to evaluate this year. Like Brandon Ayuk, I did an episode on. Like Brandon Ayuk is right there as far as the elite receivers, I think, in my opinion, this year. But look at who got the favorites. Jerry Jeudy, C.D. Lamb, as far as, higher ranked. And rightfully so, those guys have proven it on the field. But, I mean, you look at, some of the Pac-12, like Ayuk at Arizona State, he was, what differentiates him from Lamb and, Jerry Jeudy, he's done a lot of great things year one in the NFL. Jalen Reagor from TCU too. But that's the point being that those guys get even the more recognition as far as in the benefit of the doubt as far as draft position and the likelihood of going higher in the draft. So yeah, it's just a huge upward spiral if you're one of those playoff teams and one of those top 4 teams in the country. But yeah. Point being that, you get to 8 teams and you're talking about like a 3-loss team in the discussion. If you have 3 losses, you have no business competing for a championship in college football. That's just my opinion. But I guess some would beg to differ. But people would argue that you could still have all 2-loss or undefeateds in, which, I mean, would probably be the case 80 to 90% of the time. But there'd still be the time where you're debating between a 3-loss team. And it's like, come on, man, if you lose 3 times, it's like you should be done. But that's just my take on it. This reality is, being creative. No one cares about Iowa nationally, and it's created in that's why when I talk about college football, I'm talking about the elite teams because that's how I'm watching, because college football is becoming a very top heavy sport, which I don't mind. Some people don't like it. But, this is if you argue for an 18 playoff, whether you're an analyst or a fan, this is the reality you're creating. Iowa will be forgotten about. A 1-2-loss team early on will be forgotten about. That's just the reality because it's, so much about the playoff. And, bowl games are decreasing in value with players sitting out. That all started a few years ago with, McCaffrey and Fournette and some of those guys. But, yeah. So when you want to expand to 8 teams, think about Iowa. Think about Herbstreit's comments in Iowa. Think about your team not being talked less about on a national level, your team getting less recognition, and recruiting going up even more for college football becoming even more and more top-heavy, and the regular season becoming even more and more devalued. Is that something you want when you think about it? You got to take a long, hard look at it and really think, is that something that you would enjoy if you're a college football fan, or if you're a fan of a team who is like in Iowa or who's in TCU, a team that's has a decent tradition, Wisconsin, but is doesn't get the recruits. Do you want the top heavy schools or the power traditional schools to become even more dominant? So I want to get into the college football rankings. At number 1, Alabama. No complaints here. I think Alabama is the best team in the country. I've been saying that for the whole year now. This team is, what's scary is they're better than last year, I think. And I think some people would argue that, but the way their offense is played, the way Mac Jones is slinging the ball down the field, and the way Najee Harris is running, and they've stayed pretty healthy offensively and defensively. No problem here. Alabama, I think, best team in the country, in my opinion. No issues with them here at number 1. Number 2 is Notre Dame. The bottom line for Notre Dame being here is the win over Clemson. I think the committee has really taken a lot of value in that game, even though Clemson was missing several starters, and I don't think it was nothing to get too excited about. I think it was like a solid win. Anytime you can beat Clemson, even though it's without Lawrence and you got like 4 or 5 guys off on defense, shows that Notre Dame, that's they're closing the gap, I would say, if anything. But don't think they'll beat Clemson the second time around. So this ranking a little too high for me. I think in reality Notre Dame should be 5 to 8, somewhere in that range. But I think I'll swap them out with another team that I'll get to here in a minute. At number 3, Clemson. Look like they are likely the second best team in the country. But, the loss to Notre Dame, I think, is really why they're here at number 3. If they beat Notre Dame, likely, I think, in the 2 spot, I could argue the number 1 spot. But with Trevor Lawrence healthy again, and this team looks hungry, and if a team wants to play them, they should run the table, beat Notre Dame in the ACC title, and have a good shot. Or not a good shot, but likely a lock in the playoff. So, number 4, Ohio State. Thing with Ohio State, they beat Indiana by 7 and looked, pretty good for most parts of the game. But the key with Ohio State for me, I'm dying to see them play like a Clemson or Alabama or Florida or A&M, a team with great athletes and a team that's, really elite. And I know Ohio State could beat them. I just want to see how they match up, because this is Ohio State defense that's not as good as it was last year. They don't get the pass rush like they did a year ago when they had Chase Young in the defense. So that's something I'm just dying to see. But if Ohio State wins out, and hopefully the Michigan game is played, then they should be in the college football playoffs, no problem, even if they only have 6, whether it's 5, 6, 7 games, and they're undefeated and they win the Big Ten, no problem with them getting in the playoff there, even with less games. But Texas A&M at number 5. Texas A&M, bottom line, they've recruited better. They're well coached this year. Had the early loss to Bama, and then the thrilling win over Florida. Florida didn't really play that well that game, but I think A&M here at 5 is okay with me, because I guess they've beat everyone who they're supposed to beat, even though they've beat some down SEC teams. LSU's down, Vanderbilt's terrible, Mississippi State's not very good. They give them credit because in a wild year in the SEC, they've pretty much beat who they're supposed to beat, and have one loss to the number 1 team in the country. So then at number 6 is Florida. Florida, I would probably probably swap Florida with A&M, and Notre Dame I actually probably put at 7. So I'd probably switch A&M and Florida, even though A&M beat Florida. I think Florida, since they got rid of their defensive coordinator after the A&M game, Florida's just so well coached, and to have a guy like Pitts on offense is just so crucial, and it really just makes their offense so dominant, and they have so much speed and athleticism. And Dan Mullen is just a great offensive mind. And I really think Florida could beat anyone in the country, honestly. So I should have them at 5. Florida's a team that's going to get their shot, could get their shot likely against Bama in the SEC title, whether it's them or A&M out of the East. And it would be Florida versus Bama in the SEC title, because A&M's in the West. So Florida going to get their chance to prove themselves against Bama in the SEC title. So could likely have them at 5 and swap them with A&M. But, that's going to do it. Thanks for tuning into this clip from Big Time Football Talk. Thanks so much for your support, guys, of the channel. Make sure to like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video. And until next time, peace.